All Pokemon lay eggs. All of them. Even God came from an egg. If we were to take this at face value, making the assumption that all Pokemon lay eggs, despite the fact that using the daycare center, Pokemon can wildly interbreed so much that it throws a giant wrench into the biological species concept, but for Pokemon to... Can I say this word on YouTube? Combine genetics to produce offspring? Pokemon need to, you know. So I'm gonna have to speculate on how this is done. In real life, the evolution of, word I can't say on YouTube, involved Lika. Note, not Luca, our last eukaryotic common ancestor. Whereupon combining and shuffling genes within its species was better suited to a changing and variable environment. Shit sucked, so we invented and that's the evolutionary advantage to the word. Beneficial genes can be spread to more offspring. But in the Pokemon world, Pikachu can cream! So maybe magic is involved? And the genes that cross species don't affect what species the offspring will be, but can influence moves, stats, and personality? So it's gotta be something like this. The female produces some large gamete, while the male makes some small gamete that, when combined, causes a biological signal that makes a hard shell to form, with the new baby growing inside. And with Pokemon who can just summon a ball of spirits to shoot at people on a whim, the production of such magical gametes should take no effort and can be done fairly often, meaning that there isn't a lot of pressure on females to be choosy about mates. But they are. Well, dimorphism in Pokemon exists, and the hypothesis behind dimorphism involves the assumption that females have to be choosy about mates because egg production is an energy-intensive process. And we know that egg production in Pokemon is energy-intensive because Chansey loses health outside of battle when using soft-boiled. Egg making for wild Pokemon is probably costly, and they'd probably be unable to make the massive numbers of eggs that you'd see at a daycare center. So something else is going on here. For Pokemon to feasibly, constantly produce viable offspring that can cross entire kingdoms of life, a machine must be used. A hidden machine, if you will. Long ago, the Pokemon games didn't have husbandry, but in Gen 2, suddenly Pokemon could. Professor Elm is credited for discovering Pokemon eggs. But what does that even mean? Elm describes eggs as if they aren't developing embryos in a shell, but instead the shell is like a cradle, as if the Pokemon inside were already fully formed. That sure doesn't seem like normal biology. You know what that sounds like? Cloning. And while we're at it, what on Poke Earth happened to it? We know that the events on Cinnabar Island created Mewtwo, and that the island continues to have dubious scientific experimentation via fossil reviving, but we don't know if knowledge of cloning is public. Sure, there's more artificial Pokemon found, and more fossils revived, and horrible amalgamations made, but cloning doesn't come up again in the games. Between the events of Red and Blue and Gold and Silver, a volcanic eruption covers the entire island in magma, destroying all evidence of the experiments that made Mewtwo. How convenient. At the same time, Bill's transportation technology has already been well established in this world. This is in addition to PCs, teleporters, an entire machine is dedicated to just trade with someone 2 feet from you. The first time we meet Bill, he's all Cronenberg the fuck up, but this shows that the combination of 2 different living creatures is possible using this technology. Enter in Dr. Fuji, also known as Mr. Fuji. A kindly old man who cares for Pokemon and helps the player character soothe the lost soul of a Marowak in Lavender Town. But this bald head holds a dark past. He is credited for creating the Cinnabar Lab, the very lab known for the creation of Mewtwo. It's pretty common knowledge by now that Mr. Fuji in his previous scientific life tried to clone Mew and his daughter, improving upon it, creating Mewtwo, and leaving notes about its creation in the abandoned Pokemon mansion. In fact, most of the data, tech, and possibly failed Mew clones are left all alone, out in the open, ripe to be discovered. And now, we circle back to Professor Elm. Described as a shy, kind man, if a little forgetful, Professor Elm is known for his research into Pokemon eggs, an entire stage of life that all animals have, previously unknown to humanity, apparently. He's interested in the origin of Pokemon life, has been shown to be studying rare Pokemon cellular biology. He's also one of Professor Oak's top students. He also had enough data on Pokemon for a Dr. Young to target his and many other experts' computers with a malicious hacks to extract data on strong Pokemon, including Entei and Mewtwo. Who are you, Elm? Eggs didn't exist in the wild. Elm invented them, and I know how. I have to venture into speculation because Pokemon canonizing these events would be absurd. Because clearly, there's only room for one absurd here. Graduate student Elm is trying to study the origin of Pokemon life, which leads him down the trail that many researchers go down: the search for Mew. Under the guidance of Professor Oak, he travels to Cinnabar Island because a trainer of Oak's had apparently come across something interesting. There, he goes to the lab, taking a particular interest in their fossil reanimation machine, making comments about how amazing it is and how it illuminated how life could have originated through the creation of new life. A scientist there suggests that Elm look into the Pokemon mansion with a conspiratorial gaze, as if the two were in on the same plan, even if no one had explained it to Elm yet. He enters the mansion, instantly surrounded by fire and poison type Pokemon. He runs off in a panicked direction. Stumbling into the basement, he finds a room to hide in, and a journal. He learns of a dark secret that's well known to everyone who isn't inside the world of Pokemon. His mind races, perhaps from the flighty adrenaline, the cold spark of mildly unethical scientific inspiration. But most likely, it was probably all the fumes. He makes connections to theories and ideas in a way that any doctoral student would be envious, if not jealous of. He finally has his thesis idea, and he knows exactly what he needs to accomplish it. In a mad skrill, he writes it down. And a good thing he does, because the next thing he sees completely resets his attention onto this new thing. He sees a pink, squishy thing, and immediately recalls what was written in that journal. This must be Mewtwo, born of Mew, the one too powerful, the one who many scientists before him failed to stop from its vicious tendencies, the one who has destroyed the very mansion he has retreated into, has killed, and will probably kill again. And yet, he was alive, and continuing to do so. Professor Elm was never much of a trainer and probably will never be, though in rare circumstances, even the worst at something can accomplish something extraordinary. A concept he was never able to grasp was reading a Pokemon's expression, and yet, looking into the soulful eyes of the creature before him, he understood, and at the same time, was being understood. Elm gently pat the creature, who wiggled in response. That's a weird way to pronounce Mewtwo. Elm got up, patted the dust off his pants, and began exploring the basement in earnest. The Ditto followed, its curiosity leading it to wander behind him. There, among the abandoned and shattered remains of scientific equipment, he pieced together the jigsaw-like fragments of a machine, quickly noting how it all reminded him of the fossil revival machines he just saw. Motherboards, processors, drives, though damaged, he might be able to learn something. Anything, once he hooked everything up. With a flip of a switch, the machine whirled back to life, continuing orders long since deemed unethical by scientists who had grown wise through the exact events Elm was replicating now. A singular pink cell floated in the center of a large cylinder. Fluids and bubbles swirled it gently. The decade of time only shown on the outside of the container with scratches, scorches, and rust, while inside the water shone clear, and the pristine cell wiggled peacefully, and then it split. Elm gasped, wiping furiously to get a better look, and then pressed his face against the glass. He was seeing it, the cloning of Mew in action. It split once more. Elm breathed rapidly, causing the glass to fog, then wiping it away desperately. A small, gooey limb extended towards him. He shook it away like a child enraptured by a video game. It extended again, with Elm shushing the interrupter through tense teeth. A rumble came from the earth. Deep, deep underneath the unmistakable initial wave of an earthquake rippled through the ground, shaking Elm from his fascination. He knew he had to move fast. He grabbed a hard drive, scooped up his new friend, and ran for the exit. Outside, he saw he was not the only visitor from Johto. With an earth-shattering bellow, the Pokémon announced his fury. Entei, the volcano Pokémon, a fire-type legendary whose roar causes volcanoes to erupt. Elm grabbed his notebook, nearly dropping his slimy friend in the process, and began taking notes. Unaware of the anger present before him, a plume of lava shot from the earth, carrying with it billowing black smoke that quickly encompassed the sun. Molten rock poured over the sides of the growing caldera, building and destroying everything at once. Townsfolk flooded the streets, carrying what little they could to escape boats and rescue Pokémon. Blaine fought back the inferno using his expertise in fire, directing people towards the harbor. His eyes fell on Elm. Standing like a rock jutting out of a river, the young man's attention evidently on something far above Blaine. The gym leader noted how odd Elm looked, and then saw the pink blob of a Pokémon crawl onto that man's shoulder, and his past flashed before him. Subconsciously, he began to piece something together. He looked up and saw what Elm was transfixed upon. The legendary beast standing tall over the island on a rock jutting out of the volcano, slowly forming where Blaine's gym once stood. Their eyes met, and the judgment blazed within Entei's eyes. Guilt rose within Blaine, yet he could not pinpoint why. He turned to the Pokémon mansion where a river of lava was running towards, and it all clicked. Bury it all then. He turned his back on that decayed past and directed his attention onto protecting the townsfolk. Blaine mounted his Rapidash, steering it onto the heels of the last of the evacuating crowd, grabbing the absent-minded professor in training, and quickly called his Pokémon back, ensuring nothing of importance was left behind. Blaine directed his Rapidash onto an escape boat, just as the eruption hurtled rocks and earth covering the road where they came from. The air was heavy with ash as the townsfolk watched their home of Cinnabar Island become a part of nature once more. Blaine looked on in the direction of the Pokémon mansion, seeing the red-orange glow of fire through smoke and haze. He, more than any person, knew what had made those fires that color and intensity. What he would never find out was the real culprit lay right under his nose. Elm returned to Kanto University with extensive notes and began discussing his doctoral thesis with Professor Oak. With bright eyes, he revealed his plan, a machine capable of creating Pokémon, but not an artificial one, a real, living Pokémon, based on the technologies he had studied. Oak, while impressed by his students' initiative, cautioned against making a Pokémon from scratch, as many have tried to make Pokémon before him and failed. Discouraged, Elm returned to his studies, going over the notes in the hard drive he took. His pink blob friend, who he has since learned is actually a Ditto, wheels up to him, as concerned as a jelly baby can be. The Ditto leans over Elm's desk, seemingly curious about everything. Elm explains as best he can, going through all the data, stationery, and even the knickknacks scattered everywhere. The Ditto continues to watch with unending interest, as Elm eventually spots a picture of his wife. He explains how he and his wife have been trying to have a child for a while, with no luck. In a flash of inspiration, Ditto transforms. Before Elm, a small humanoid takes shape, short, 2 foot high, blondish hair. A child. Though the face was... Everything else seemed the perfect blend of him and his wife. Overcome with emotion, Elm immediately starts crying. Gingerly, Elm pokes Ditto, its form wobbling in response. It was at a loss for words looking at this potential glimpse of the future. And then the Ditto reformed into its gooey pink state. Elm sighed and smiled, warmed by the sentiment as the gears in his mind clicked. It's well known now that Dittos each have their own unique skill at transforming, and are known to appear as human sometimes. But back when Dittos were more rumor than widespread news, all that was known was their unique cellular structure. Elm looked at the hand he patted the Ditto with, seeing small globs of pink. Taking a glass slide with one hand, he slowly scooped a sample of the glob and peered at it under a microscope. To his surprise, the cellular structure resembled something that of humans, yet it was slowly reforming into something more basal, like a cell which all other cells come from, a stem cell. His chair flung backwards as Elm burst upright, standing up over his findings. With a sudden inspiration, he clambered to his phone, picking it up and calling Oak, forgetting it was 11 at night, and was patiently told by an exhausted Oak to meet him tomorrow morning. It couldn't come fast enough for Elm. He stayed up all night, fueled by an unrivaled passion as he put together his experiment. The next morning, Oak came by Elm's dorm room, concerned that Elm hadn't shown up to his office at the crack of dawn. The door slowly swung open to reveal whiteboards, cork boards, and poster boards covered in notes, designs, and peculiar drawing of Pokémon. Before Oak could say anything, Elm sprang up, demanding a list of odd equipment, tanks, tubes, and a Pokémon trading machine. Any other person would have seen the scene before them as a massive, "This is a mad scientist and I'm about to be an accomplice to unspeakable horror" flag. But something about Elm's unwavering smile, glasses hanging on at an angle, and the Ditto in the background using a dry erase marker to cover over his scientific textbook put Oak at ease. By noon, Elm had put his requested equipment together in a spaghetti of metal and plastic. The trading machine had been outfitted with a tank in the center, with many tubes and wires coiled up around the machine. Professor Oak produced the Pokeball with a Pikachu Elm had requested, and placed it on the left side of the machine where Pokemon to trade are usually placed. Elm turned to Ditto, gave it a big hug, caught it, finally. Elm looked to the machine with determination, placing the freshly caught Pokeball on the right side, and flipped the switch. The machine whirred to life, its power drain causing the lights to flicker, and the tank in the middle bubbling madly, filling with something pink. Light encompassed the two Pokeballs, but instead of teleporting, they remained in place. In the middle, the tank was filled with a brief flash, and the pink slowly shifted to yellow, oozing into something with more form, slowly coalescing into a Pikachu-like creature. But instead of a long, spiky tail or straight ears, it had a stubby little rectangle on its butt and diamond-shaped ears. The two scientists watched enraptured at this odd Pokemon continuing to take shape. A ding like an egg timer signaled that the machine was done, and emerging from the central tube with a cloud of fog was a Pokemon soon to be called Pichu. Elm fainted. The overwhelming success combined with the unexpected outcome and the lack of sleep overcame him all at once, though he seemed to be taking it well on the floor. There were things to improve upon for sure. The wires, the tanks, even the process itself. The vat could be outfitted to produce a hard outer covering for the developing offspring, allowing it to be portable and produce many more since offspring wouldn't have to be developed in vats. Eggs were born. Not the wild eggs that many Pokemon seem to be able to produce, but capital E eggs. They weren't eggs like people were used to. Instead, the Pokemon inside were mostly formed, just needed time to stabilize. They were conscious, aware of their surroundings. Warmth and adventure seemed to make the Pokemon inside ready for the world faster. Elm described these new creations as cradles because the baby inside is alive and formed, but just not ready for battle yet. Another oddity was that Pokemon of very different species could produce offspring via Elm's machine. It seems the compatibility has to do with general morphology and typing rather than genetics, likely due to how the machine itself works. Two Pokemon provide a genetic basis, using their digitized DNA to produce an offspring. The female provides the majority of the genetic information, though it's mostly tradition that dictates that. But since you reliably knew what species you were gonna get, it hasn't posed much of a problem. The machine produces many cloned stem cells from Ditto and uses that as a basis to insert the genetic information into, causing a chain reaction of division and differentiation into a newly formed baby Pokemon. The issue of recombination, the shuffling of genes from both parent and the basis for evolution to act upon, was solved with the peculiar transforming skills of Elm's Ditto. Things like Destinynon and Everstones cause proteins to bind onto the parent's DNA, tagging them and causing them to be expressed in the offspring over other genes. Incenses, though discovered later, activate old non-coding pieces of DNA and make the offspring an ancestral form of the parent, provided you use the right incense for the right Pokemon. Using a second Ditto just counts as default, and the machine uses whatever the other Pokemon is. Sometimes the machine makes too many stem cells and they have to be taken out of the machine where they form into other Dittos. That's why you find Ditto around the world and not just on Cinnabar Island. The same technology that made them there is being replicated all over. Such a fantastic technology would surely find its way into every region. But there was an ethical issue. The ethics of cloning in of itself are in constant debate. Is it right for us to bestow life onto a creature that is in constant comparison to its predecessors? Is the science involved able to safely create a full life for the clone? Is the money involved in clone creation being put wisely? Or instead, can that money be put to help creatures that are alive right now? Well, none of that matter for Pokemon breeding since weird Ditto magic's involved, but no one wants to tell kids about that. It's like how in America you could show kids blood, guts, and violence, but
Listen, little Gold, when a Pokemon and another Pokemon love each other very much, and they're left alone for a secret amount of time, and sometimes an egg is made. Do all Pokemon have cloacas?
Turns out people in the Pokemon world don't want to tell their kids about the funny number time, just like here. But that's why eggs are made so quickly and so readily at daycare centers. They get DNA from both parents and then bam! An egg a minute! By the way, if you ever run a Pokemon tabletop RPG, never use breeding mechanics like in the games. My army of Riolus was completely within the rules of the game! I did the math, you gave me 2 months time skips, and I made all the acorn balls! In any case, this story should be considered with a grain of salt. I've extrapolated on theories and evidence that can't really be confirmed by Game Freak. And not only that, after recording this, I saw a video debunking a huge thing here. That Ditto is in fact not a failed clone of Mew, as confirmed by Game Freak, and is in fact just a funny little guy. They're a smiley face parody, but that doesn't change the theory too much. Maybe they're just cloning Dittos at Cinnabar too? The biggest linchpin in this whole crackpot theory of mine is the Ditto that can estimate offspring and transform based on that. But since this is a bit of Pokemon lore that Game Freak may never expand upon, I like to keep my little fan theory because it's nice. It's nice to think that a bumbling genius like Elm could find academic success through a kindness to a creature he was once terrified of. Oh, and for sure, that would make his current son, the original Ditto he found on Cinnabar Island. He wants to grow up and be a professor just like his dad. Well, thanks for watching. This was gonna be part of a much larger video, but as I worked on it, I realized it needed its own video. So expect that much larger video, sometime in the future. Special thanks to all of my patrons on Patreon for their continued support. I want to especially thank Fairy Tarzana, Bree, Chris, The Rollin' Thunder, Eva, and Radar Love. If you want to support me financially, please go to patreon.com/Cosmine and look at all the little tiers I've got and choose the one that suits you best. Also, follow me on Twitter and you'll see my stream schedule where I'm also streaming on Twitch, pretty much Thursday through Sunday, kind of late night sort of stuff. It's a variety of things, and you can also message me directly through Discord. All these links are going to be in the description. You don't need to sleuth that out. I'm trying to figure out where they all are. I also have a coffee if you want to throw me a couple bucks for like some VTuber things. All of it's like free. You can just, it's just donate stuff. It's fine. I also have life duty commissions. I've made this model. This is the life duty model that I have made, and I spent a lot of time on it just to show off how good I am at the rigging and stuff. So please consider commissioning me, cause I quit my job because I want to work on stuff like this full time, for real. Anyways, have an excellent day. Yeah, you thought I was gonna go through this whole egg video and not make one pun! Oh my god, please don't put a wrench in the whole fucking theory. God!